Hi, this is Carol Pope.
Hi, I'm Kevin Staples.
And you're listening to Rainbow Country
with Mark Tara.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, my coverage of the 48th edition of the Toronto International Film Festival begins. On this episode, the launch of the Canadian Film Selection at this year's festival. Meet the programmers with Associate Curator of the experimental film program known as Wavelengths. That programmer, Jesse Cumming. Plus we'll hear from Senior Director of Audience and Community at Tiff, Keith Benny. All that and more in episode 368, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hello, my name is Conchita.
And I'm Barbecue.
And my name is Hardcora. And we are the Beat Girls.
You're listening to
Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello, and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT FM in Toronto, and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's gay and lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #1 LGBT podcast on feedspot.com. So today, coverage of the 48th edition of the Toronto International Film Festival begins. And on this episode, I'll take you to the launch of the Canadian Film Selection at this year's festival. We'll also meet the Associate Curator of the experimental film program Wavelengths. We'll find out what that particular program is all about, and we'll meet Jesse Cumming. Plus, we'll hear from Senior Director of Audience and Community at TIFF, Keith Benny, who sheds some light on the effects of the Hollywood writers and actors strike on this year's festival. Plus, in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode I'm featuring some classic rock, some queer electronic, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 368 through Rainbow Country, and our first stop is what I like to call the Rainbow Country School for Canadian Gay History. And on today's lesson, from activist, author, and historian Tim McCaskill, Canada's gay liberation movement of the 1970s.
In the 60s, before the internet, to find each other, queer people needed to actually get together in real space and real time. Since most places didn't tolerate our kind, depending on where you were, your options could be limited. Large cities might have a few specialized commercial spaces, but in the absence of those, it was basically public washrooms, parks, or house parties. They all had their downsides. Commercial spaces required you to spend money, and that's one of the reasons why they were mostly for men. Even in places as big as Toronto, there was seldom more than one lesbian bar at a time. Lesbians earned about 60% of the male wage and probably had more dependents. The economy just wasn't there. The old adage was, gay men go to restaurants, lesbians hold potlucks. Washrooms and parks were also pretty much boys only and could be dangerous, plus parks in the Canadian winter, not so good. You could freeze your willy off. House parties, you needed to know somebody, or know somebody who knew somebody, and so on, and be invited. In terms of commercial life, Montreal had led the pack, developing a Sin City reputation during Prohibition in the US in the 1930s. And where there's sin, there's always a place for us. Toronto the Good and Vancouver took a bit longer, but in 1974, Toronto had enough anonymity and a critical mass to produce a small commercial scene. At first, it was mostly straight bars where we were tolerated in a corner as long as we behaved. Next came a few straight-owned venues that served gay clientele. By the mid-70s, a new class of gay entrepreneurs emerged and started to open up on Church Street where rents were cheaper. But not everybody lived in Toronto or Montreal. In smaller centres, where businesses couldn't meet community needs, the lesbian and gay liberation movement of the 70s came up with a new model. Defy economics and do it for ourselves. We might not have a lot of capital, but we did have free labour. For example, the Lesbian Organization of Toronto established a non-profit community centre in a ramshackle old Victorian house in 1977. It held dances and brunches and drop-ins and provided meeting spaces and a coffee house and hosted a phone line for a whole generation of women. Loot, as it was known, was following a strategy already developed elsewhere. In Saskatoon, the Zodiac Friendship Society opened its community centre in 1973. Edmonton and Calgary soon followed suit. HALO, the Homophile Association of London, Ontario, started in 1974, and the Halifax Gay Alliance for Equality first began running dances in the Turret in 1976 and later turned that into a community centre. By the end of the decade, there was a network of lesbian and gay groups providing community spaces in dozens of medium-sized centres across Canada, volunteer-run and community-controlled. This is Tim McCaskill, a gay liberation dinosaur from another planet and author of Queer Progress.
Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Coming up next, the launch of the Canadian Film Selection at this year's Toronto International Film Festival.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Good evening and welcome. It's the opening night.
Tonight, we thank you. I am so humbled and so grateful to be here this evening.
I'm extremely excited to be here. Thank you all for holy shit. There's a lot of y'all.
I'm very proud to be here tonight, and I'm so grateful that you joined us.
Don't stop till you get enough.
Hello, Toronto!
Happy Halloween, Michael.
Muchas gracias. Toronto, the best of them all.
That's it! That's amazing!
If you ever film the base to watch films, it's Tiff.
I want to thank Toronto because you have always honored, celebrated, exalted female directors.
The warmth and the love that you gave me is something I will never forget in my life.
It's so exciting to be here at Toronto in this gorgeous theater.
This feels like Christmas Day.
Thanks to you for coming.
This is truly a very special evening for me.
This is why we do what we do, you know.
I love this festival and it's an honor to be back.
Behind me is what we call society, what we see in there every day, and what we have on screen. Let's keep on doing movies about us. We're making pictures about what's happening today in society. Thank you for coming.
Good morning and welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Judy Lung, and I am Vice President of Public Relations and Communications here at Tiff. Oh. you. Thank you. It is such a thrill to be here together with all of you in this magical space to celebrate Canadian film. As I look around the theater, I see an array of incredibly talented storytellers and creatives who have created not only some amazing films that we're going to see this year, but also pathways and opportunities for new, exciting voices to emerge. And I also see a large and very important network of supporters and champions in a variety of roles, including film critics and reporters, publicists, marketers, funders, and programmers, to name but a few. So today, we're proud to celebrate the Canadian film selection at the 2023 Toronto International Film Festival. And in doing so, we also celebrate a thriving and powerful industry, one that I know we're all so proud to be a part of. And now it's my pleasure to welcome Cameron Bailey, CEO of Tiff, to the stage to say a few words.
Thank you, Judy. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks so much for coming. It's just so great to see you all here. This feels like the little sneak preview of the festival buzz before the festival comes to town and all those other people from all over the world descend on our city. We get to come together first, right? So I want to just, first of all, thank all of you. And especially, I see a lot of familiar faces. Here's some of you in this room I have been working with in various capacities for about 30 years, maybe. Some are new colleagues and friends. I'm glad to see all of you here. This is the 48th edition of TIFF, and it promises to be a thrilling one. Some of the thrills were not planned, I'm going to say that, because we do have some unique challenges this year, but we've got a stellar lineup of films programmed, including and especially the ones we're going to be talking about today. This is going to be a memorable, exceptional celebration of Canadian and global cinema. I want to thank you for your support over the years, and especially these last few years. It's always been interesting. Every single year for the last 3 years, roughly, has been very interesting. So thanks for your support during that. This organization has grown and evolved in ways we could not ever have imagined, and its continued success is due in large part to you, to the people in this room, our local community. As I look through the schedule and out across this room, I'm taken aback by how far we've come as an industry. I first entered this industry as a student reporter in 1987, covering the festival. TIFF is many things to many people at its core. It's not only a showcase and a celebration of Canadian cinema, but a fundamental part of the talent pipeline as well. We consider ourselves to have a massive responsibility that we honor and we respect, not only on days like today or the 11 days during the festival, but all year round. Of course, we can't do it alone, and we do this in partnership with all of you, so thank you. As well, I also want to take a moment to thank our major industry supporters, Ontario Creates and Telefilm Canada, for their continued support of our festival initiatives every single year. We look forward to continuing that work with all of you during what promises to be an exciting year ahead. And a special thank you also to those who help us do what we do at TIFF, our members and our donors. We need your support. We're grateful for your support, and we do this work with your support. Thanks also to our lead sponsor, Bell, and our major sponsors, RBC, Visa, and Bulgari, and of course our major public supporters, the Government of Ontario, Telefilm Canada, and the City of Toronto. Now, before I turn things over to our Chief Programming Officer, Anita Lee, I want to share some news about an exciting addition to the Lightbox. We continue to look for opportunities to expand what we can offer to moviegoers and all of the film community in the city, and also just to enhance the experience. The building is now almost 13 years old, and we've been thinking and dreaming for a while about how we could refresh at least a part of it. So with that in mind, this fall we're going to be opening a new cafe bar upstairs on the 3rd floor of TIFF Bell Lightbox. It's going to be a new destination on King Street West and a place to gather for chat, for conversations, maybe before or after a film, or even if you're not seeing a film, I think you're going to find it a cool place to meet friends, for coffee, real coffee, cocktails, real cocktails, all the way through the day and into the evening as well. So I'm excited to officially announce here the name of this space, which is not something we took lightly. In reimagining this third floor, we looked to a legendary filmmaker and someone who became a friend to me over the last years of her life for inspiration, Agnes Varda. Her spirit of creativity and exploration informed not just the look and feel of the space, but the atmosphere and the energy that we wanted it to provide. Just as Agnes Varda's films capture the essence of life and curiosity about other human beings, our cafe aspires to be a place where people can come together, share stories, and make meaningful connections. And so it became obvious that the new cafe bar on the third floor could have only one name. We're going to call it Varda. You will be able to get to know Varda soon. It will open officially to the public on October 6th, but before that, Varda will be open during the festival for members and festival guests to experience the space and all that it has to offer first. And we will catch up with you on more details shortly. I can't wait for you to see and to experience the space and to maybe run into you there someday having one of those real coffees or real cocktails. And now I want to welcome our Chief Programming Officer to the stage. Please join me in welcoming Anita Lee.
Good morning. So excited to be here. So pleased to see everyone today. As you all know, Tiff serves as a crucial platform for showcasing Canadian cinema to both domestic and international audiences worldwide. Canadian films featured at the festival hold a distinct position, fostering a sense of cultural identity, artistic expression, and creative power as a nation. We also strive to support the Canadian industry to provide Canadian filmmakers with a unique opportunity to connect with industry leaders, distributors, and audiences from around the world. We are proud through TIFF's Talent Labs and Industry Conference to support Canadian filmmakers through the festival and year-round. This year, we have added a new Canadian award, the Amplify Canada Goose Trailblazer Award, for a Canadian BIPOC producer who has made a difference in the Canadian industry. Yes. The inclusion and positioning of Canadian films at TIFF not only celebrate the diversity of narratives and perspectives that are unique to who we are, but also bolsters a key creative and cultural exchange with the international community. It enhances Canada's reputation as a vibrant hub of cinematic talent. This year, we are very excited to launch the inaugural CJ Entertainment, Kofic and TIFF K-Story Fund, a $30,000 development fund for 3 feature films by Korean, Canadian, and Korean American creators. Before I welcome Robin Citizen, Director of Programming for Festival and Cinematheque, and our Canadian Features programmers, Norm Wilner and Kelly Busalis, let's have a quick look at some of this year's titles.
I did that movie, it came out, and made me into a star. I don't know where I would be without that movie.
See all the good folks that showed up today? Light 'em up!
Yes, super exciting. We are very, very excited to present an incredible lineup of 50 Canadian titles in the festival this year. Woo! Those are 21 feature films, 20 short films, 6 documentaries, and 3 series. Yes. Canadian films are programmed in all our sections of the festival, from galas to docs to shortcuts, by Tiff's dedicated team of programmers. We are thrilled to see Canadian films increasingly present across all our sections, including galas, special presentations, and platform. This is a testament to the flourishing of Canadian talent and storytellers, and we are proud at TIFF to play a pivotal role. So, to kick things off, I'll be announcing our galas and special presentations. Our galas and special presentations, along with the Canadian programmers, are programmed by Cameron Bailey and our secret weapon, Jane Shoto. Okay, so we have Solo by Sophie Dupuis. Yes. Swan Song, Chelsea McMullen. Hate to Love, Nickelback, Lee Brooks. In our special presentations, Close to You, Dominic Savage. Days of Happiness, Chloe Robichaud. Rue, Charles Olivier Michaud. Seven Veils, Atom Ogoin. We are also very proud to present a very special classic restoration supported by Telefilm, written and directed by Bridget Berman, Artie Shaw, Time Is All You've Got, the winner of the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature in 1985. I would like to now invite Robin Citizen to announce our platform and centerpiece.
Thank you, Anita, and hello. It was my pleasure to oversee and lead the selection of this year's platform section, TIFF's competitive international program spotlighting director-led visionary cinema. Last year, the winner was a Canadian film, Rice Boy Sleeps. And this year, we're excited to have another Canadian film in competition, The King Tide by Christian Sparks. From our centerpiece section, we have Fitting In by Molly McGlynn. Hey Victor by Cody Lightning. Strong contender for best title of the festival, Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person by Ariane Louises. In Flames by Zahra Khan. Irena's Vow by Louise Archambault. Carnaval by Henri Pardot. And The Nature of Love by Monia Chokri. I would now like to invite Norm Wilner to announce titles in the Docs, Discovery, Wavelengths, and Primetime programs.
This is still so weird. I will read from the script, but before we do that, I want to acknowledge two people without whom. First is Steve Gravestock, who did this job for many, many years and who is here today. And the other is Ravi Srinivasanan, who is not. He should be. And it's a privilege to do it instead, unfortunately. I am, however, thrilled to announce Canadian titles across these 4 very distinct programs, and I would like to acknowledge the section leads for Docs, Tom Powers, Discovery, Dorota Lech, Wavelengths, Andrea Picard, and for Primetime, Jeff McNaughton. Kelly Woodsels will be coming up in a moment. Documentaries. We have Boil Alert, directed by James Burns and Stevie Salas. I Am Sirat, directed by Deepa Mehta and Sirat Taneja. Mr. Dressup, The Magic of Make-Believe, directed by Robert McCollum. And Summer Camp, directed by Jen Markovitz. In Discovery, and please pay attention to these because they're exciting. Backspot, directed by D.W. Watterson. Yeah. I Don't Know Who You Are, directed by M.H. Murray. And yeah. Seagrass, directed by Meredith Hama Brown. Tatuktovuk, What We See, directed by Carol Kunuk and Lucy Tulakarjuk. And The Queen of My Dreams, directed by Fauzia Mirza. They're all great. Meet the filmmakers, see the movies. In Wavelengths, we have He Thought He Died from Isaiah Medina. Mamselle Canopsia from Denis Coté. And a 3D wavelength short from Blake Williams, Labyrinth Sequences. And finally, the primetime series we have from Canada, Black Life, Untold Stories. Episodes directed by, Bria Mack Gets a Life. And Telling Our Story. I'd now like to invite Kelly Boutsalis to announce the short cuts program.
Hello. Shortcuts is TIFF's short films section reflecting the best short films from around the world and programmed by Jason Anderson. Canadian short films have always had a strong presence in Shortcuts and is often the launch pad for Canadian filmmakers. Canadian titles selected this year are 6 Minutes Per Kilometre by Catherine Boivin, Aftercare by Anuba Momin, All the Days of May by Miriam Charles, Aphasia by Marielle Delpay, Begal Noor, Lake Begal by Alice Telangut, Bloom by Casey Lum, Express by Ivan D. Otha, Gabby's Hills by Zoe Pelchat, I Used to Live There by Ryan McKenna, Making Babies by Eric Boulian, Meteor by Ateifa Kademol Reza, Modern Goose by Karsten Wall, Motherland by Jasmine Mozafari, Mothers and Monsters by Edith Yorish, Red Lights by Eva Thomas, Sawo Matang by Andrea Nirmala Wijajanto, The Skates by Halumi Oradiri. Sorry. This Is Not About Swimming by Marnie Van Dyke, and Shia Shia Ollie by James Michael Chiang. Well, thank you again for joining us today. We will see you all in September. Thank you.
Hi, this is Michael Anthony Alago, music executive, photographer, author, and you are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Coming right up, the Senior Director of Audience and Community at TIFF, Keith Benny, talks about the ongoing Hollywood strike some LGBT films to look out for at this year's festival, and more. Keith Benny, hi, how are you?
Hi, Mark. I'm great, thanks.
Keith, I have to say thank you for being here, especially to talk about the Toronto International Film Festival, 2023's edition of Toronto's International Film Festival. You are the Senior Director of Audience and Community at Tiff. Let's start there. Talk to me about what being the Senior Director of Audience and Community at Tiff, what this entails. Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So TIFF presents year-round programming at our home, TIFF Bell Lightbox. And my team, the public programming team, is responsible for all different types of audience engagement at the Lightbox. So that's talks, series, screenings, workshops, exhibitions, public art activations. And our goal is to make the Lightbox feel like a real cultural destination for anyone interested in film and media in the city of Toronto. We also have a film reference library as a part of our offerings, which is a space for audiences to read and research, to watch film. We have thousands of films on a variety of different formats that our librarians would be happy to connect audiences to. And so all of this activity is really to connect audiences with film, to provide opportunities to connect, to learn, to watch film together, to have conversations about it. And so we do hundreds of events year-round at the Lightbox and at the Film Festival, which, as you know, is coming up very soon.
Yeah, you just mentioned it. The 48th edition of the Toronto International Film Festival runs September 7th to the 17th. What are you excited about for audiences to see at this year's festival? What are you jazzed about for this year?
Yeah, I'll say we have over 20 feature films that have LGBTQ plus characters and storylines, and a lot of these films, that I've seen over the summer are really exciting. There's some new voices as well in Canada that are bringing films to audiences that have really great queer storylines. And so, like every year, I'm really excited for audiences to discover new filmmakers that they might not have met before, or come and see something that they're really excited about, that they've heard that TIFF is showing, and they line up and get their ticket and join us for a screening. And so there's really nothing like that feeling of a full cinema. In some of the venues we show here in Toronto, there's over 1,000 people or 1,500 people watching a film for the first time, the very first time that film is screening. And so it's always those moments that I look forward to, the opportunity for a film to connect with the Toronto public for the very first time.
So as we are recording this interview, there is a very much active strike happening in Hollywood, a writers and actors strike. Things may change before September 7th when the festival starts. But in regards to the Toronto International Film Festival and this ongoing strike, from your perspective, from what you know, what changes, what can audiences expect to see because of this ongoing strike? Can you share a bit of insight into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the strike has been something that we have been, managing over the course of the summer. But what I'll say is that TIFF is an international film festival, as it is in the title. And each year, approximately 70% of our films are from non-US productions. They come from 70 plus different countries. And so, those films, many of them are not affected by the strike. And so if that's 70% of our slate, then, there's not going to be a marked difference in what the festival feels like, because our audiences, come for those films from around the world. They come to see and support the films that are at the festival, because they know it's the first opportunity many of these filmmakers have to see their film connect with an audience. And so, all of those international films are coming, and they will have, stars from their own home countries and filmmakers from their own countries. And I'll say too that most of the films that are from the US, that do have that kind of Hollywood talent, many of the films we're showing are not owned by the struck companies. Those are the major studios and streamers. And so for those films, SAG and AFTRA cast members are allowed to participate in the promotion of those films if they have an interim agreement. And so that group of films are films that, haven't necessarily yet been sold. And so it's still part of the access that they have to promote the film, to talk about their involvement in it. And so, while there may be an impact to a certain number of films, what we want audiences to know is that it's a very small number, actually, in relation to the international slate of films that we have. There's still going to be filmmakers here. There's still going to be actors here. There's still going to be really exciting conversations that happen in our cinemas.
So the red carpets are still going to be happening. The festival street that happens the first weekend of the festival, that's still on and everything?
Yeah, red carpets, absolutely. We will have those, and Festival Street as well, which has become, a really great addition to the festival in the last, 5-6 years. And Festival Street is a free opportunity, for audiences, even if you don't have a film ticket, to come on down to King Street, King and John, take part in the buzz and excitement of the festival, walk the street, participate in some of the booths there. We have our community partners, our corporate partners activating and connecting with our audiences on the street.
When it comes to the strike that's happening in Hollywood, do you see an upside to that when it comes to this year's festival? In other words, more emphasis on the international slate of films, more independent emphasis when it comes to like the directors and those actors, that sort of thing. Do you see a silver lining to this?
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is true, is that there will be an opportunity for more of the international titles, more of the Canadian titles, perhaps, to get more of that spotlight, more of that opportunity for audiences to learn about them that they may not hear of in another year where there may be more Hollywood presence. And so I think absolutely there is more of an opportunity for those international actors and directors, or those up and comer, kind of Canadian talent to get more of the spotlight. So I think you're right in saying that it could be a silver lining this year. We, of course, want the strike to be resolved as soon as possible, so that everyone, can get back to doing what we love, which is, creating more films for audiences to see. But this year, if these are the parameters we're working in, we're going to find the very best ways to present a strong festival and to present the best films that we have year in and year out for our audiences who come.
So the last few years, the world's been dealing with a global pandemic, COVID-19, and Tiff pivoted during that time to an online digital aspect. And the last year or so, we've been slowly coming out of this and having the film festival be in person. Last year, I know it sort of felt pretty normal to a certain degree. But will Tiff... will this year's festival still have a digital component so that audiences, maybe across Canada, if they wanted to partake in their own way during the festival, they can log on and maybe see a curated selection of films that are part of this year's Toronto International Film Festival? Will there be a digital aspect to this year's festival as well?
So we've moved back to a fully in-person festival at TIFF, and that's because we believe that you can't replicate the kind of in-person experience in the same way that you can digitally. And so Where the magic happens is when people come together in a cinema and watch a film together, especially for that first time experience. But I will say there's still digital extensions that we do at TIFF. And so the industry conference that happens, the In Conversation With events that we do, those kind of major talks, some of those will be shared digitally online for audiences to take part. And we also still do have the digital TIFF Bell Lightbox platform. So that is our digital way of extending the film festival, extending the Lightbox experience to audiences who want to rent a film from us. So while that won't be happening in the same way that we have been during the kind of COVID years, we will still be having films that premiere at the festival in September that will then appear on our digital platform once they're released later on in the year. And so while it may not be the more immediate way that we connected with audiences, while people couldn't necessarily gather in the same way, we do have that digital extension year round. And we do, to your question, see the opportunity for more people in the country or the province to take part in what TIFF is and the magic that happens there. So we actually have a series called International Cinema Cafe, which is a year-round focus on kind of global cinema. And we have that as a hybrid series. So we offer it in Toronto, in person in our cinemas, and then we also have a digital version of that where we offer that audiences can take part in that cinema club digitally.
And I will also say that on your YouTube channel, the TIFF YouTube channel, there's live red carpet events that have happened in the past during the festival. I've seen those live, as well as when there's a premiere that happens. Usually the Q&A goes up a few hours after the fact, all that sort of stuff. So people should also check out TIFF's YouTube channel. It's great. I love it. You mentioned earlier,
absolutely.
You mentioned earlier about LGBTQ films that are part of this year's festival. Here's my last question for you. Have you seen any of them that are part of this year's festival that you are excited for audiences to see when it comes to some queer cinema at this year's Toronto International Film Festival?
Yeah, absolutely. The first one that comes to mind is a film called I Am Surat.
Documentary.
That's right. And it's co-directed by Deepa Mehta, really accomplished Canadian filmmaker, and first-time filmmaker Surat Tanaja. And it is about trans lived experience in India. Surat is the subject of the documentary, and she is incredibly compelling, vulnerable, deeply moving to learn about her experience negotiating the world as a man living with her family, but as a woman in society, because she feels this duality between needing to be there for her mother and be a kind of caregiver, but then also wanting to live her full life outside of the house. And so really innovatively put together as well. It's done with a lot of iPhone footage that Surat takes as kind of a first person. And it was very moving, very compelling. And Surat is going to be here in Toronto for the premiere. So I think that's going to be a really special title. I'll also highlight Close to You, which was written by Elliot Page, and is and it stars him as well, and it's about his return, the character that he's playing, to his family back home and having to reconcile who he is now with who he was then, and how family reacts to queer identity and trying to reconcile that experience. And then, one final one I'll highlight is a short film actually called Strange Way of Life, directed by Pedro Almodovar, who is the kind of 5 decades now he has been making queer LGBTQ plus cinema. It's his most recent film. It's a gay Western featuring Pedro Pascal and Ethan Hawke. It's having its North American premiere at the festival, and it's screening as part of our In Conversation With series. So we're going to do a sit down with Pedro, and he's going to talk about this newest film in relation to his larger body of work.
Well said, well said. Keith, Benny, thank you so much for your time. Well said, well done, well curated. Everything.
Thank you.
Thanks for being
Mark.
on the show.
I always appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I look forward to seeing you at the festival.
If you would like to find out about all the LGBT films that are part of this year's Toronto International Film Festival, simply head over to marktara.com and hit the Tiff banner.
Hi, everyone. This is Mark Tewksbury, Olympic champion, leader, humanitarian. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Next, Associate Curator of the experimental film program Wavelengths, Jesse Cumming, fills us in on just what this particular program that's part of the Toronto International Film Festival is all about. Jesse Cumming, hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I am good. I'm better now that I'm speaking to you to talk about the 48th edition of the Toronto International Film Festival. Runs September 7th to the 17th. You are the associate curator of a program that's part of the film festival called Wavelengths. Let's start with the basics. Wavelengths. What is this program that's part of the festival about? Let's start there.
Sure. The program's been around for a number of years. It's taken a number of formats, which has included short films, feature films, and installations at certain points as well. The name is adapted from a very important experimental film by Canadian artist Michael Snow, who actually passed away earlier this year in January, and we're dedicating this 2023 edition to his memory. And so it's kind of an undefinable program in ways. We try to leave ourselves tough to pin down. But we always are looking at work that pushes boundaries of the artistic form, cinematic form, whether in terms of narrative or style or any other types of experimentation.
And who would you say is the audience for this program, Wavelengths? What type of person?
That's a great question. I mean, I think sometimes the program can get a reputation of being very challenging and maybe a bit alienating, but I know myself and my colleague, we really believe very firmly that anybody who's interested in entering the cinema and opening themselves up to a new experience with generosity will be really, really richly rewarded. And so we're always very open to it. And sometimes we show films, we can even talk about some of them later on, that are completely abstract. And some people say, you know, this is the type of work that I need a degree to understand. And I reply to them that this is work that is just as enthusiasm inducing for a child. You know, it's colors and lights, and it excites us in that same way. So I really believe that it's anybody can find a lot to take from this program.
So Wavelength is a celebration of subversion, personal expression, and proposes new ways of seeing and being in the world. This year features, I believe, 12 feature-length films and 19 shorts. Talk to me about the process of mining these films that make up this year's program. First of all, how many submissions for Wavelengths did you receive in 2023 for this year's program?
Yes, I'd have to double check the exact number, but upwards of 400, I'm sure, several, if we include the short films and feature films. The programming process, I'm sure it's similar to a lot of our colleagues, where we are attending festivals, following festival schedules, tracking new films. We have a lot of relationships with a lot of filmmakers that we're following their work. With Wavelengths in particular, we're also following very closely what's happening in the contemporary art world. And we've always been very proud to be able to bring in work that has maybe shown only ever in a gallery space or in a contemporary art biennial, and be able to present it in a cinematic space. And so this is something we're always very proud of. And so we keep our ear to a lot of ground, not just the film festival world and not just student films that are emerging, but also the contemporary art world and archival world as well. We're lucky to have some archival restorations in the festival this year from the great Chantal Ackerman, a queer icon who passed away a number of years ago.
So I believe it's Andrea Picard.
Yeah, Andrea Picard.
The two of you are the curators for Wavelengths. Is it just the two of you, or do you guys farm out submissions to sort of whittle down the films that make up this year's program? Did you guys have any help at all screening these films?
Yeah, it's less a question of farming out as much as working collaboratively with our colleagues who, whereas we have a sort of a generic specialty focusing on experimental films, our other colleagues have maybe more regional specialties. Our colleagues who program from Southeast Asia, for example, or Eastern Europe or Canada, they also found some great work when they were doing their pre-screening and were enthusiastic enough to invite films and slot them in Wavelengths. So for one example is a film called Mademoiselle Kenopsia. A Canadian filmmaker, Denis Coté, was invited by our colleague Norm Wilner, and he has invited it to the Wavelength section. And so because of our wonderful, generous colleagues, we're able to have such a robust program that has these 12 really dynamic features.
Out of curiosity, is Wavelengths the program that once screened a film that's like 6 hours long or 12 hours long or something like that?
We typically do. This year we have one that's 212 minutes, which is about 4.5. It's called Youth Spring by Chinese documentary filmmaker named Wang Bing.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the one you're thinking of is
Watch Your Bladder.
Yeah, exactly. I think the one you're thinking of is La Flor, which I have to double check. I think it was 12. Very long Argentinian film from a couple years ago. We go long and we also go short. Some of the films in this year's program are 90 seconds long, so we really run the gamut.
So Jesse, I'm curious, how long have you been part of TIFF?
This will be my 7th edition working at TIFF as part of the programming team, and it's my first year taking on the role of associate curator.
You just mentioned it's your first year as associate curator. How is it sitting with you?
It's really, really nice.
This new title.
Yeah, it's fun. In ways, the program, before I was the programming associate working alongside Andrea, but they were never really felt like such a hierarchical relationship. There hasn't been much of a change taking on this new role because we always work very collaboratively. As you can imagine, the type of work that we're very interested in, it's quite subjective, and it really invites a lot of discussion. And so the programming process, we talk a lot and we share a lot of ideas about what we think works, what we think is exciting. It's a really nice and rewarding process.
So Jesse, you are a film curator, an arts administrator, a researcher, a writer. I'm curious, how did you originally get turned on to the arts? What was that initial spark for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's maybe not the most original answer, but I think, as a teenager exploring world cinema and the Criterion Collection and the French New Wave and Fassbinder movies and things like that got me very excited, and just getting deeper and deeper, turning my eye to what was happening in terms of contemporary art house was very exciting. And gradually started to dip my toe into programming, originally with more DIY and sort of experimental scenes, particularly in Toronto. And then I was lucky enough to kind of land within the film festival world, which has been really rewarding.
And these films that are part of Wavelengths, they'll be shown at the Tiff Bell Lightbox in downtown Toronto?
The majority will screen at the Tiff Bell Lightbox, and there are also some screenings at the Scotiabank Cinema downtown.
So my last question for you, Jesse, what films that are part of Wavelength 2023 that you are excited about for audiences to check out at this year's festival?
That's a great question. There's a lot of really, really beautiful films, and
any 12-hour films?
Well, the longest one is Wang Bing, Yeah, 4.5. I wish we had a 12-hour film this year. It's always really fun. We have a 3-hour film as well with the title is just as long. It's Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World by director Radu Jude from Romania. And that's really, really great. Yeah, there's plenty of really great stuff. One of the ones that I really love a lot is a film called The Human Surge 3 by an Argentinian filmmaker named Eduardo Williams. And he shot it over about 6 years with a group of collaborators from Sri Lanka and Peru and Taiwan. And it kind of moves through all of these spaces in a very, very experimental way. He shot the film using a 360-degree camera, the kind you would use to produce like a VR film, but then kind of rework the footage so you can see it in a 2D cinema space. But the images that it produces are disorienting and beautiful and eerie. It's a wonderful, really, really exploratory film that, my jaw was open the first time I saw it, and I can't wait to see it myself on the big screen.
Well said, well said. Jesse Cumming, I have to say thank you so much for your time. Well said and well programmed.
Thank you, Mark. I'm very, very grateful for taking the time to speak with me and for your interest in the program.
By the way, the Toronto International Film Festival runs in person September 7th to the 17th. For all things festival, simply visit tiff.net.
Bill 7, to ban discrimination in employment, government services, and housing, based on a person's sexual orientation, was up for a vote at Queen's Park. Most NDP and Liberal MPPs supported the bill, but without some progressive Conservative legislators backing, a divisive split could rack the province. 4 PCs decided to break party ranks to vote with their conscience and support Bill 7. Cabinet Minister and MPP Dennis Timbrell did it to show solidarity for his beloved brother, the well-known drag queen Rusty Ryan. And for me, a gay politician who was not yet out, I had to take a stand. We were known as the Gang of Four. I'm former Cabinet Minister and MPP Phil Gillies. The date, December 2nd, 1986, when LGBT rights came to Ontario.
And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.com where everything is connected and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out the socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, despite all the craziness in the world these days, note this, that we are living in days of making dreams come true, so believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi there, I'm Bennett Singer, a documentary filmmaker and the co-director of the new film Cured. You are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.